Your town had a main street. You remember it. The hardware store where the man behind the counter knew your name and what size bolt you needed before you asked. The pharmacy where the pharmacist filled your prescription and asked about your mother. The shoe store where a woman measured your foot on a metal slide and came back with 3 boxes. The diner where the waitress poured your coffee without asking and the meatloaf was the same every Thursday. It was all there, on one street in one town. And then one store showed up on the edge of town, and within 10 years, every one of those places was gone. This is how it happened. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. You did not notice it at first. Nobody did. The new store opened on the highway, on the edge of town, on a piece of land that used to be a cornfield or a cow pasture or nothing at all. It was big, bigger than anything your town had ever seen. The parking lot alone was larger than your entire downtown. And the sign, blue and white, simple, impossible to miss from a quarter-mile away, said one word. You know the word. Everyone in America knows the word. And the first time you walk through those automatic doors, doors that opened for you like you were somebody important, you understood immediately why people were going to stop coming to Main Street, because it had everything. Not just hardware, not just pharmacy, not just shoes, everything. Hunting rifles next to baby formula, car batteries next to birthday cards, garden hoses next to eyeglasses, fishing lures next to frozen pizza. Every product from every store on Main Street was here, under one roof, in one building with one parking lot and one set of prices that made your eyes go wide. Because the prices were lower, not a little lower, dramatically lower. The same box of nails that cost $3.40 at the hardware store cost $1.99 at the new place. The same bottle of aspirin that cost $4 at the pharmacy cost $2.29. The same pair of work boots that cost $45 at the shoe store cost $29 on a shelf between the garden hoses and the dog food. You did not need a calculator to figure out what that meant. You needed a conscience. And for the first few months, you had one. You went to the hardware store out of loyalty. You went to the pharmacy because the pharmacist knew your name. You went to the shoe store because your mother had bought your first pair of shoes there in 1958, and the woman behind the counter still remembered. But loyalty has a price. And when you are raising 3 kids on a factory salary, and the difference between shopping on Main Street and shopping at the new place is $40 a month, $40 that could buy school supplies or gasoline or a birthday present, loyalty loses. Not because you are a bad person, because you are a parent. And parents do math. Within a year, the hardware store started closing early on Wednesdays. Within 2 years, the shoe store had a permanent sale sign in the window that everyone knew was not a sale but a plea. Within 3 years, the pharmacy was gone, not relocated, not rebranded, just gone. The metal slide where the woman measured your foot was thrown in a dumpster. The counter where the pharmacist asked about your mother was dismantled. The booth where the waitress poured your coffee without asking was empty, and the meatloaf recipe went home with her and stayed there. This happened in your town, and in the town next to yours, and in the town next to that one, and in every town within 25 miles of that blue and white sign, not because something went wrong, because something went exactly as planned. The man who planned it was born in Kingfisher, Oklahoma in 1918. His name was Sam Walton. He was a quarterback in high school, an Eagle Scout, and the kind of man who shook your hand and looked you in the eye and made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. After the war, he borrowed $20,000 from his father-in-law and bought a 5 and dime store in Newport, Arkansas. a Ben Franklin franchise, a small store in a small town, and he made it the best small store in the state. He was one of you. That is the part that makes this story hurt. Sam Walton was not a Wall Street banker or a corporate executive or a man who had never set foot in a small town. He was a small town man. He drove a pickup truck with his hunting dogs in the back. He wore a baseball cap and a windbreaker. He chose Bentonville, Arkansas, population 3,000 as his base, not because of the business climate, but because it was close to good quail hunting in 4 states. He ate at the local diner. He knew the pharmacist's name. He shopped on Main Street. And then he built the thing that killed Main Street. Not in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, in Rogers, Arkansas. Population 26,000, July 2nd, 1962, the first one. His idea was simple, and it was brilliant, and it was devastating. He would put everything under one roof. Hardware, pharmacy, shoes, clothing, groceries, toys, electronics, automotive, garden, everything you used to buy from 7 different stores on Main Street, he would sell in one building on the highway for less money. And the reason he could sell it for less money was the reason those 7 stores could not survive. He bought in volume. He negotiated directly with manufacturers. He built distribution centers and connected them with a satellite network before most companies knew what a satellite was. He tracked every item in every store in real time, and he passed the savings on to you, not because he was generous, because low prices brought high volume, and high volume brought higher profits than high prices ever could. 78 stores by 1974, 640 by 1984, 1,500 by 1990, the year he passed Sears and Kmart to become the largest retailer in America. 7,000 by 2026, 2.1 million employees, $1 trillion in market value. The Walton family fortune, $440 billion, enough to buy every small town in America and still have change. The numbers are impressive. The damage is not. For every store that opened, a study by Loyola University found that 2 local businesses closed within 2 years. Specialty retailers, the kind that lined your Main Street, declined by 55% in the 40 years after the first store opened. An Iowa State University study found that sales at sporting goods stores, jewelry stores, and gift shops dropped by 17% within 10 years of a new store opening nearby. Towns with populations below 5,000 lost nearly half their retail trade. But statistics do not bleed. People do. And the people who bled were the ones whose names you knew. The hardware store owner who had been there for 30 years, the man who could tell you the difference between a carriage bolt and a lag bolt without looking it up. The man who special ordered a part for your furnace and called you when it came in. He did not close because his products were inferior. He closed because he could not buy 10,000 carriage bolts at a time and sell them for $1.99. He closed because his supplier charged him more per bolt than the big store charged the customer. He closed because the math was impossible, and when he locked the door for the last time and walked to his car in the parking lot behind the building where his father had started the business in 1947, he did not blame you for shopping somewhere else. He understood. He was a parent too. He did the same math you did. The pharmacist who filled your prescriptions for 20 years, who knew which medications you were on without looking at the computer? Who called your doctor when something didn't seem right? She closed because the big store had a pharmacy in the back corner, staffed by a pharmacist who did not know your name and did not call your doctor and filled prescriptions with the efficiency of a vending machine. The prescriptions were the same, the pills were the same, the price was $3 less. And $3 multiplied by 12 prescriptions a year multiplied by 1,000 customers was the difference between a pharmacist who knew your name and a counter in the back of a building the size of a football field, the diner owner. The woman who made the meatloaf, she did not close because of the big store directly. She closed because the people who used to come to Main Street for shopping stayed for lunch, and when they stopped coming to Main Street, they stopped coming for lunch. The meatloaf did not get worse. The coffee did not get cold. The customers got redirected. They drove to the highway, parked in the big lot, bought everything they needed under one roof, and drove home. They did not pass the diner on the way. They did not pass anything on the way. The highway is not Main Street. The highway does not have a diner with a counter and a waitress who remembers how you take your coffee. The highway has a drive-through with a speaker and a number. And here is the part that should make you furious. After it killed everything on Main Street, after the hardware store closed and the pharmacy closed and the shoe store closed and the diner closed and the barber shop closed and the five and dime closed and the fabric store closed and the sporting goods store closed, and Main Street looked like a row of missing teeth with for rent signs where the smiles used to be. After all of that, in some towns, the big store left too. Pana, Illinois, population 5,700. A town that was once a bustling community a century ago. It had large greenhouses growing roses and served as a distribution center for the rest of the country. The big store arrived in 1983. 3 independent pharmacies closed within a few years. They could not compete with the prices. The locally owned businesses on Main Street shut down one by one over the next decade. The shoe repair shop, the dress shop, the toy store, the hardware store that had been in the same family for 2 generations. Gone. All of them. Gone. For 35 years, the big store was the only game in town. People drove there for everything: groceries, medicine, clothes, tires, birthday presents, light bulbs, dog food, everything, because there was nowhere else to go. The big store had made sure of that. It had systematically eliminated every alternative within a 20-mile radius. And the town had accepted it the way you accept weather. You do not fight rain. You do not fight the store on the highway. You drive there and you park and you buy what you need and you drive home. And then in 2018, with 1 month's notice, 1 single month, the big store closed. Not because the town was too small, because a bigger store in a bigger town 20 minutes away was more profitable. The corporate office in Bentonville, Arkansas, a town of 55,000 people with a median household income almost double the national average, decided that Pana, Illinois was not worth keeping. They offered the employees the chance to relocate to nearby stores. They did not offer the town the chance to relocate to a nearby Main Street. There was no Main Street left to relocate to. A 73-year-old man named Glenn Schneider, who had worked maintenance at the store for 17 years, stood in that empty parking lot on a cold December day and said, "A year ago, there would have probably been at least 50 cars here." A researcher at the Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs said what everyone already knew: when the big store leaves, there is really a void. Because all those mom and pop shops that were there 40 and 50 years ago are no longer there. The big store leaves, and there is this emptiness. Emptiness. That is the word. That is what is left. First, the big store killed everything. Then the big store left, and the town was alone, with nothing but the memory of a Main Street that used to have names on the windows and people behind the counters and a pharmacist who asked about your mother. And here is the irony that nobody talks about. The man who built the thing that killed Main Street, he started on Main Street. Sam Walton's first store, the one he opened in 1950 after losing his lease in Newport, was on the town square in Bentonville, Arkansas, a 5 and dime. The kind of store that he would later destroy in 10,000 other towns. He stood behind the counter of a small store on Main Street and sold thread and buttons and greeting cards to people whose names he knew. And then he built a machine that made every store like that one impossible. He knew what he was doing. He had to know. He was not stupid. He was, by every account, one of the most brilliant businessmen who ever lived. He flew his own airplane over small towns, tilted the plane on its side, and counted the cars in the Kmart parking lot below to decide if the town was big enough for one of his stores. He studied his competitors the way a general studies an enemy, and he chose, deliberately, to target the small towns that the big chains were ignoring, the towns with populations under 50,000, the towns where a single store could dominate because there was no room for two, the towns where Main Street was the only street. He did not do it with malice, he did it with math, and the math was correct, and Main Street paid the price. Your Main Street is still there. You can drive it right now. The buildings are still standing, most of them. Some have been repainted, some have new awnings, most do not. The hardware store has a different sign or no sign at all. The window is dark, and you can see the empty shelves through the glass if you cup your hands against it and look. The pharmacy is a consignment shop or a real estate office or just dark, with a yellowed piece of paper taped to the inside of the door that says, "Thank you for 43 years of loyalty," and a phone number that nobody answers. The shoe store is a vape shop. The diner is gone. The counter was ripped out and the ceiling tiles are falling, and sometimes on a warm night you can still smell grease in the bricks if you stand close enough. The barber moved to a strip mall 2 miles away and lost half his customers in the move. The Five and Dime is a storage unit. The dress shop is a tattoo parlor. The jeweler is a payday loan office. The record store has been empty so long that the for rent sign in the window has been bleached white by the sun. The buildings are there. The names are not. The people are not. The pharmacist who asked about your mother is retired in Florida or buried in the cemetery on the hill. The hardware store owner who knew what bolt you needed without looking it up sold his inventory for pennies and moved in with his daughter. The waitress who poured your coffee without asking has not poured anyone's coffee in 20 years. She still has the apron. She still has the coffee pot. She does not have the counter or the customers or the Thursday meatloaf or the sound of the bell above the door that meant someone was coming in. And on the edge of town, on the highway, on the piece of land that used to be a cornfield, the parking lot is full. 2,000 cars, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day in some locations, under a blue and white sign that says one word, the word that replaced every name on every store, on every main street, in every small town in America. You know the word. You drive past Main Street to get to it. You do not look at the empty storefronts anymore. You stopped looking years ago. Everyone stopped looking. And that, the not looking, might be the worst part of all. And now you know the cost.